Hello, this is a video on how to play the card game Piquet. And so Piquet is a fun sort of hybrid card game. It has multiple components to it. It's played with strictly two players, and so if you have more players, unfortunately you'll have to play a different game. And if you're looking for a card game to play solo, this would not be an option. Um, and so what you'll need is a 32 card deck. And so this is your standard 52 card deck, but you remove the 2s through the 6s. And so you'll be left with the aces through the 7s in each suit, and that'll add up to 32 cards. You'll need two players, right? Obviously, can't forget that. Um, and you'll also need a pen and a paper to actually keep score properly. And so when you're dealing, um, just note that each player is dealt 12 cards in sets of 2 or 3 cards. And so what we just did here was called the cut. Um, and the player with the lower value, I guess, card from cutting, and this is just an optional thing, but you basically take your deck, split it at a certain point, and you look at the card you have. It's called cutting the deck. And the player with the higher value card is known as the the non-dealer, and the player with the lower value card is the dealer. And so each player is dealt 12 cards in sets of 2 and 3 cards. So you'll go 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, right, like that, or you could go 2, 2, 2, 2 back and forth. However you would like to deal, but just knowing that each player has 12 cards. And so if you look here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Both players have 12 cards. And so then you'll have your remaining 8 cards placed into the middle. And so the remaining 8 cards of the 32 card deck are right here. And so now what I could do is I could also choose to exchange some cards. Both players, and so let's just talk about the objective of the game first before I get into it. The objective of the game is to score the most points. You have 6 total deals. So you will go through this sequence that we just went through 6 total times. And so points are scored through card combinations as well as winning tricks. Cards are ranked from highest to lowest, with aces being the highest and 7 being the lowest. All other cards fall in between with their regular values. And so the combinations that score points, and we'll talk about this later. And so each player gets a chance to exchange cards with cards from the remaining deck. The non-dealer, in this case, the Y is the person who's the dealer, so that would be me. The non-dealer is my opponent. And the non-dealer gets a chance to exchange cards. He gets the first chance to exchange cards with the deck. And so I did not keep track, but you'll notice that the non-dealer exchanged between 1 to 5 cards. Note that you must, if you are the non-dealer, you must exchange at least 1 card, right? Between 1 and 5. And the way you exchange is you discard your cards that you are, I guess, exchanging, and you set them off to the side. Then you draw new cards from the top of the deck. So let's say you wanted to exchange 3 cards. You take the 3 cards you wanted to exchange, set them off to the side, and then you would draw 1, 2, 3 more cards from the deck. So that's how you exchange. The dealer then gets to exchange up to the amount of cards left. And so notice that there are 8 cards here. And so if he exchanged 5 cards, there are 3 cards here. So then I can exchange up to 3 cards. The dealer can choose not to exchange any cards. It's up to the dealer. In this case, I'm actually going to exchange my lowest value cards here. Unless I can make a sequence. No, that seems unlikely. And so what we'll do is we'll exchange the lowest value cards here. And so it just said it was exhausted. It called it the talon. The middle deck is sometimes referred to as the talon, and so that is what I was referring to. Notice how my opponent could exchange 5 cards, right? The non-dealer gets the first dibs. So he exchanged 5 cards. That means since there were 8 cards here, there are now only 3. It's not even really an exchange. It's just discard and pick up new cards. There's no exchange happening here. And so since he took 5 cards, there are only 3 cards left in the middle here. So notice how it only let me exchange up to 3 cards. And so that's what we'll do. So we exchange those 3 cards, and now there are no more cards left in the middle, right? And so now we're going to talk about the combinations. Now, there aren't too many combinations, and so the scoring in Piquet is really quite simple. So he declares a point of 5. Now, let's just talk about this. Piquet has 2 phases. There is a declaration phase, and then there is a trick-taking phase. In the declaration phase, one must declare all of their combinations that they can score for. The non-dealer is the first to declare the combinations in their hand to try and score points. Please note that only the player with the best combination in each category scores points for that category. You can't have both players score points for the same combination. Only one player, the player with the best combination for that category, will score for that category. And so the dealer will declare a category. And after the dealer declares a category, the non-dealer goes first, and the non-dealer will declare a category. After the non-dealer declares a category, the dealer then says good, no good, or equal. And so let's just talk about this. This will get a little messy here, right? Because you have to learn about both the combinations and how you score them, but there are not too many. And so first, let's talk about the point combination. The point goes to the player with the number of cards in the longest suit. What I mean is the player with the most cards of a single suit. I guess that makes more sense. And so he's saying a point of 5. That means he has 5 cards of the same suit. Note that only one player can score for each category, and so either my opponent can score for the point or I can score for the point. Since he said point of 5, now I say good, no good, or equal. Good means the non-dealer's combination is better, or your opponent's combination is better and can be scored. No good means my combination is better and my opponent cannot score, and equal means that both players have an equal combination, and equal in terms of length. Now, I said good. That means his combination is better. He has a point of 5. I only have a point of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4 spades. I only have 4 cards of one suit, right? And the point combination goes to the player with the most cards of a single suit. So I'm going to say good. This lets him know that he can score. He has a point of 5 equal to 49. And so what that means here is when you're scoring for the point combination, you score the actual number of cards you have. And so let's say I had the higher, number of cards. I had a point of 4. Let's say he just didn't. He had a lower value point for whatever reason. Hypothetically, I would then score 1, 2, 3, 4. Since he had a point of 5, he scored 5 points for that combination. If you had a point of 6, you'd score 6 points, right? And so that's how you score for the point combination. Next, he is going with, this is in a somewhat arbitrary, the callouts here that my opponent is making are in somewhat, Spanish. And so they're not arbitrary. And so what my opponent is calling out here And so my opponent called out Quint there. And you'll notice that the point value went from 5 to 20. This means my opponent scored 15 points. Now, what this means here, and let's talk about this. And so my opponent scored a quint. Quint meaning 5. So that we wouldn't really say 5, we'd say a sequence of 5. And so let's just say he called out a sequence of 5, aka a quint. I then look at and see if I have any sequence. Note that a sequence must be cards in increasing order in the same suit. And so since he had a sequence of 5, that means he had 5 cards in a row. That could be 7, 8, 9, 10, Jack, Queen. In this case, he said quint to king, but it did get cut out here by me while I'm recording. But he said quint to king. That means his sequence is to king. So it would be king, queen, jack, 10, 9. If two players have the same lane sequence, the player with the highest value card in their sequence, the higher highest value card. I'm trying to make this make sense. Basically, what I mean by the higher highest value card is, let's say you had a sequence to king, like I just stated, and then another player had a sequence from 7, 8, 9, 10, jack, queen. Well, their sequence would only be to queen. And so that's not as good as a sequence to king. And so the player with a sequence of king would score for the sequence. This is only if you have an equal lane sequence. If a player has a greater lane sequence, it does not matter the rank of the cards. The player with the greatest lane sequence always scores for it. And so you score the number of cards in the sequence. And so if you have a sequence of 3 cards, you'd score 3 points. If you have a sequence of 2 cards, you would score 2 points. If you have a sequence of 1 card, well, that's not even a sequence. Sorry, two cards isn't a sequence either. 3 cards or greater is a sequence. So if you had a sequence of 3 cards, you would score 3 points. If you had a sequence of 4 cards, you would score 4 points. If you have a sequence of 5 cards, and now you're wondering, how did he go from 5 to 15? From 5 to 20, a 15-point increase. If you have a sequence of 5 cards, 5 or more cards, you get an extra 10 points. He called out a quint, meaning 5. So he had a sequence of 5 cards. So not only did he score 5, he started out at 5. He scored another 5 points, getting him to 10 for the sequence. He also scored a bonus 10 points, getting him to 20. Now my opponent is trying to score sets. And so he says trio. And I say not good because I have better. I have a 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4 cards that are the same. And so I have a set of 4. And so I'm going to say not good. And so then my dealer is going to, then my opponent is not able to score for that. And so that's how you score. Mainly, there are a couple exceptions. And we'll talk about the extreme cases at the end of the video. But generally, the point combination is the player with the most cards in a single suit. The sequence is the player with the longest sequence and the highest ranking sequence of 3 or more cards. And then a set is just the player with the longest set. And if 2 players have an equal lane set, the player with the higher ranking card in the set scores for the set. Quite simple. That's the declaration phase. Now let's get into the trick-taking phase. How do you score points in the trick-taking phase? Now remember, through all of this, the objective of Piquet is to score the most points through 6 deals. And so how do you score points through the trick-taking phase? If you lead a trick, you score 1 point, no matter what, even if you win or lose. So notice how my opponent went from 20 to 21. That is because he put that 7 right there. He led the trick. If you have a trick taken from your opponent, you also get 1 point. And then if you have, now let's just talk about, let's backtrack a bit. The reason he dealt first is because he is the non-dealer. Notice how I have this Y next to me. That basically signifies that I am the dealer. And so the non-dealer always leads the first trick. After the non-dealer, now the non-dealer leads the first trick after they are done declaring all their combinations. It is then the dealer's turn to declare all of their combinations before they play the first trick. So you might be saying, okay, he declared all his combinations, and then he just threw a card down, and then you'll notice that indeed it was my turn to declare all my combinations. And so I declared my combination of 4. A set of 4 is awarded 14 points, a set of 3 is awarded 3 points. And so just keep that number in mind. That is why I gained 14 points, because I had 1, 2, 3, 4. I had a set of 4. I had the highest ranking set of 4. In fact, I had the only set of 4, but if there were multiple sets of 4, the player with the highest ranking set of 4 would score 14 points. And so the scoring system is pretty easy for declaration. And then once the dealer is done declaring, then I play a card into the trick. And so that's how you just score points for the declaration phase. It's quite simple, very, very, very simple. You just point, sequence, sets. Those are the 3 you need to look out for. And it's just basic mathematics for who has the higher ranking or greater, I guess, who has the best combination in that category. Note that now this is the trick taking phase, and so players will just play until they get rid of all of their cards. Do note that players must follow the lead suit when possible, and so notice how he played hearts. I don't have hearts, and so I do have hearts, and so I must play a heart whenever I can. Note that if I didn't have hearts, then I could play any card, but I would lose the trick essentially, right? Because the only way you could win the trick is by having the highest value card in the lead suit, and so you have to follow the lead suit whenever possible. And so Piquet, let's sum it up. Quite simple. I always like to sum it up and make it simple. 6 hands. The objective is to have the most points at the end of the 6 deals or hands. You score points in the declaration phase through the point combination, the sequence combination, the set combination. You score points in the trick-taking phase. First of all, note in the trick-taking phase, you must follow the lead suit whenever possible. You score points in the trick-taking phase. So the player who leads the trick, regardless of whether or not they win or lose, they score a point. And so notice how my opponent went from 20 to 21. It's because they led the trick. Now, if you win a trick that your opponent led, you score a point. If you win the last trick, you score a point. The player who wins the most tricks scores 10 points. It's very, very simple. Basically, if you lead a trick, you score a point. If you win a trick your opponent led, you score a point. Winning the last trick gives you an additional bonus point. The player with the most tricks won scores 10 points. And that is the scoring system. And I'll talk about some special cases at the end, but they're very, very rare. And so, sorry, I stumbled a bit. And so, note that the player who obviously wins the trick leads the next trick, just like with any trick-taking game. And so, let's just play. Let's play some Piquet. Note that I cannot play an ace, and so if I tried playing an ace, it's not going to let me, right? Because I have the lead suit, so I must follow it. I'll play an 8, that lets me win. I score a point because I took a trick that my opponent led. So now let's lead with a 10 here. So he's gonna put that down. He put a 8 of spades. I'm going to go with a 9 of spades here. And here's a smarter. I'm gonna tell you guys a couple strategies here. That I mathematically have noticed, and I believe gives you the greatest chances of well. Now that I think about it, no. Just try to win as many tricks as you can. But be strategic in the cards you play. So let's play a clover here. So he has a 10 of clover. Played a 9 of diamonds. We'll play an ace of diamonds. We'll play an ace of spades. Play a queen of spades. He does not have spades. King of hearts. Trying to exhaust his. Oh, he does have diamonds, but we had the higher. And so, notice how I went from. I had 26 there. Then I scored 1 point for winning an extra point, right? For winning the last trick. Then notice how he won 3 tricks and I won 9 tricks. Since I won the most tricks, I gained an additional 10 bonus points. So 26 to 27 and then 10 more points to 37. And so you'll sort of see that's how the scoring really worked. And so now we're going to play another round, just so you can sort of see. I have 7, 8, 9, 10. That's the sequence of 4. I really like that, and so I'm going to keep that. I have a 7 here of spades. And I don't really like that. And then I also have a queen of spades. And so I'm not really digging these cards here. So let's just exchange them. Let's see what we can get. And so I'm going to declare a point of 7. I have 7 cards in I have the most cards. I have 7 cards in a singular suit, and so I'm going to say 7. I'm going to say point of 7. He says good. That means I can score it because he does not have a point of 7. Now sequences. I'm going to say quint. I have a sequence of 5. 7, 8, 9, 10, jack. I'm going to say quint. He says equal. Now it's good that this came up because I do want to talk about this, and so when it's equal, obviously both players' cards are hidden. And so what both players do is they yell the highest card that their sequence goes to. And so I'm going to say quint to J. I say quint to J. He's going to say not good because he has a sequence that probably goes to queen or higher. And so I cannot score. For sets, I have no sets at all, unfortunately. And so I do actually have a set of 3 here, I believe. But I could not score for it. Reason being is that I guess it was just I guess it just didn't let me score for it. But do note that I had 1, 2, 3 cards here, and that would be a set of. Oh, sorry. Now I know why. Okay. I also wanted to talk about this. This was actually quite important, and I should have specified it earlier. And I just remembered it right now. And so, for sets, you can only score a set for 10 or higher. And so if you have a set of 9, a set of 8, a set of 7, you cannot score for them at all. You can only score for a set of 10, jack, queen, king, or ace. And so that is also a disadvantage of having these lower ranked cards. Not only does it make it harder to win tricks, not only does it reduce the value of your sequences, it also makes it harder to score for sets. So I'm going to play a first card leading the trick. He's going to say quint to A. I'm going to say okay. He's going to say quart to A. So he has multiple sequences. And then he also has a triple, so that's 3 points right there. That's 3 more points. Trio of Q, that's 3 points, right? 3 points for each set. Note that the player who has the highest value set doesn't only score that set, they then have the option to score for other sets. You don't only score the highest value combination in the category. You do score the highest value combination in the category, but it merely makes it so that the player with the highest value combination in that category can now score for other combinations in that category as well. And so the player with the highest value set of 3 gets to score any set of 3 he has. It basically opens it up for them to score any set of 3 they have, really. And so he played the king of diamond. And so this is quite a bad hand. This is looking like a guaranteed loss. But this is actually good because I do want to highlight another aspect. And so we are talking about these intricate rules just by playing through the game, which is quite beneficial, I believe. Note that he's gaining 1 point if you look on the counter for every trick he's leading, right? Doesn't matter if he wins. If you lead a trick, you get a point. And so he is going to, yeah. Oh no. We actually got one. Okay. Do you note that if he won all 12 tricks there, he would get an additional 40-point bonus. And so if we were lucky, he didn't win all 12 there, but he would get an additional 40-point bonus. And so hopefully you're sort of seeing how to play. We are only on the second hand here. And so I do not know if it would be beneficial for me to continue going through multiple hands. Um, but it's really just a sort of preference thing. Now, I guess, I mean, I don't think it's beneficial because it will be quite repetitive, and I think I have covered mostly everything other than these special rules. Do note once again, the most points after 6 deals wins the game, and these special rules. So, we have what's called a carte blanche. Now, carte blanche is when a player is dealt no face cards. And so let's say we did the deal of 12 cards each, and I didn't have this jack. I didn't have this queen, jack, or this jack. I had none of these face cards. You have no jacks, queens, or kings. It is then known as a carte blanche. Carte blanche must be declared immediately, and you do have to show your hand to your opponent. Carte blanche, the moment you realize you have a carte blanche, you declare it instantly. There's no order for declaring like how it's normally followed, right? Normally it's the non-dealer, then the dealer, and then no, not for a carte blanche. If any player has a carte blanche, they declare it instantly. Do note that it's quite rare that you wouldn't have at least one face card, but if you do get into that scenario, you declare a carte blanche. 10 points are awarded to the opponent who declares the carte blanche to sort of help them out because they do have quite a bad hand. And then the game continues with the card exchanges, right? So before you even exchange the cards, you declare a carte blanche before you even begin the exchange phase. Now, if a player scores 30 points during the declaration phase, if a player scores 30 points, a bonus of 60 points is received. And so it would be quite hard to score 30 points. And just looking, you would actually need to score a set of 4, score a very high value point, perhaps score a set of 3, as well as, you would need to basically score every single card you could, right? To score 30 points in the declaration phase, because you only get 14 for a set of 4, 3 for a set of 3. The point is the number of cards in the player with the number of cards, the highest, greatest number of cards in a singular suit scores the number of cards they have in that suit. The sequence is just the number of cards in the sequence, and you do score a bonus 10 points if you have 5 or more cards. So it can happen, but it's quite rare that you will get 30 points in the declaration phase. Then, if that happens, you get a bonus of 60 points, and that is known as a repique. And so that player would go into the trick-taking phase with 90 points already. It's quite rare, but it can happen. If a player scores 30 points before the other player scores any points during the trick-taking phase, a bonus of 30 points is received. That's known as Piquet. And so if you score 30 points before the other player scores any points after going into the trick-taking phase, a bonus of 30 points is received, which is known as a Piquet. And so that would really happen. Well, if you think about it, you'd have to score 30 points in the trick-taking phase. Before your opponent scores a single point, you would have to win every trick. That would get you your 12 points. um, 13 plus the last trick. That then bump you up to 10, right, for winning the most tricks, and then you'd get the 40-point bonus for winning all 12 tricks. And so do note that during the declaration, if there is an equal call for point or sequence and a tie in point value or sequence rank, no points are awarded for the category. Once again, the winner is the player with the most points after 6 deals. And so this was somewhat extensive, but it is sometimes even simple games take a long time to explain. Just because it took a long time to explain does not mean it is a hard game. I highly recommend trying it. And so that wraps up how to play Piquet. Do note that it's different from many other games that have been played. And it's good to, I guess, try out these new card games. And so thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.